Governor candidate Gamecocks. Sorry to take over.
We all give Pam a round of applause. Thank you all for coming. It's been a long evening. It's been a wonderful evening. I've been impressed with the impromptu speeches of people that didn't even know they were going to talk. Amazing. Thank you for your service. We have a similar story. I also wanted to go to the Naval Academy, and the Lord redirected my steps. And ended up going to law school, but long story. But I wanted to say, and I'm going to take questions now, but I wanted to say this. It's been refreshing to hear your passion and vision. Because one thing is true. Freedom is not free, and neither is it limitless. And I think about this because of Jamie Raskin, who I ran against for Congress, and who then, and now, is seeking to undermine our United States. The very people that were accused or accusing of what some lady just talked about are the ones undermining the United States of America, the lawfully elected President of the United States and the lawfully re-elected President of the United States. Those are the individuals who are dangerous. And you know what they believe in? They believe in Karl Marx. Now, how many people have read the Communist Manifesto? Sadly, some of you have had to do it since you were kids, probably. Well, I read it for a university project. Actually, I think my mom made me read it so I would know how to avoid communism, because I come from a long line of freedom fighters. Have you ever heard of the John Birch Society? John Birch sought to bring freedom to China through his work with Chiang Kai-shek. My grandparents joined the John Birch Society, and they trained my mother to love Ronald Reagan. And my grandmother took me along to campaign for Ronald Reagan when I was 5 years old. So I've loved freedom, and I read the Communist Manifesto. You know what it says? You all know this. What's the goal of Marx and Engels in the Communist Manifesto? The goal is one of the first principles, not the first that they list, but one of the first ones, the abolition of the family. The abolition of God's natural order on earth of husband and wife raising a family. That is the foundation of all civil societies all over the earth. So anything that militates against that is militating against the foundation of good government itself and seeking to overthrow it. And that's why Marx wanted to overthrow it. And what comes after that is the militation against the family business. Because you can't have a family if you can't provide for the business. That's what I'm running against. For 2 years, I've been fighting the lockdowns. Why? Because if you don't have a right to make an income and eat, you don't have a right as an American to exist. And what did they do? My opponent designed that list. Marxism said, what do you have to do if you don't have money to eat? Call the government. Now, she was in charge previously of the Unemployment Insurance Office, $30 million office, and they couldn't answer the phones. That is what burns in my heart, and that is why on day one of the things that I wanted you to know, there's many freedom fighters here. I intend to cut off the CCP in Maryland immediately. You have to. As state delegate, I voted to cut off Putin, Russia. Neil and I voted to say, okay, we're not going to invest in Russia. And you know what else I did? I put an amendment on the House floor and I said, we're also going to cut off the CCP.
Yes.
And you know what the Democrats did, including some of my, those who support my opponent? They said, no. They voted my amendment down. Now, we Republicans understood that this is an issue. It's coming. $3.5 billion a year estimated that Maryland does business with. Many times the CCP controlled businesses. This is a concern. Why is it a concern? Because your freedom matters, our freedom matters, Maryland's freedom matters. The Cook Political Report lists Maryland to answer the first question on the table. Where's the gentleman asking the question with the hat? Right here. How can you win in a 2-to-1 Democrat state? Did you win in Virginia? Yeah. Let me tell you something. The Cook Political Report lists Virginia as leans Democrat. The Cook Political Report lists Pennsylvania as leans Democrat. Right on the edge of toss-up is Maryland. The Cook Political Report leans Democrat for Maryland. Right on the edge of toss-up. That's right now. You can Google it. That's where we are. That's the opportunity we have. But do we need a House of Delegates? Yes, we need 10 more, 7 to 10 minimum Republican delegates. That's why we need Jenny. I think she might have left. There you are. We need you in there. I'm going to fight for you. And we have got to take back those seats. And we have done it as Republicans. So this happened just before I was elected. We did have 7, Neil was there, we did have 7 additional Republicans there. It can happen, but we've got to work hard. We need 4 more senators. So part of this campaign that you're part of for governor is we're flying the freedom flag for all of the down ballot races. So when you invest in this race, I'm actually communicating across 24 jurisdictions in Maryland, helping the America First candidates there. Like in Harford County, where we're hoping to sweep those delegate places. Like across the Eastern Shore, like right here in Montgomery County, like in Howard County. So that's the backdrop of how we're going to win. And if the Democrats don't like it, guess what? The budget of Maryland is $62 billion, and the governor of Maryland has the most power over the budget of any government in any governor in the United States. And so when the Democrats say, well, we don't like what you're doing, we're going to have a discussion. Because I don't like what they're doing. And if they want their money, we're going to talk. And money talks in their language. So that's a quick answer to that question. But yes, we have a fight, but there is hope, because these principles don't change, do they? And the Democrats want to use Maryland as ground zero to spread their communism, their Marxism, across the United States. If they win here, you know where they're looking? Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas. Yes, they want Texas. We have got to hold the line here. And when I ran against Jamie Raskin, a Marxist, I challenged him. He was willing enough to debate me 5 times, because I was running hard against him. Many of you supported me. And the first debate that we had, I held up something that was illegal in the United States. It's illegal to openly call for the overthrow of the United States by being a part of the Communist Party International. And I held up an American Communist Party apparent endorsement of Jamie Raskin. He was listed as 2 potential congressmen running, 2 people running for Congress, endorsed, supported by the American Communist Party. And I held it up in front of an audience of 300 people, and I said, the American Communist Party supports this man. He's a Marxist, you don't want to vote for him. And you know what? The audience was liberal, Democrats, and they didn't like that. And they all looked at him like, what? And the first thing he said was, he got up and he said what you just said, that Castro said. He stood up there and he said, I am not a communist. That's who I'm up against in the Republican Party. They claim they're not Marxists, but they're just a slightly different brand sometimes. Not all of them. We have great friends there, Neil knows this. But my opponent has embraced, with her boss, a pattern of Marxism that wants to take possession of your children, of your homes, and of everything about your lives, and has no regrets. So that's where we are. And that's why I'm so thankful for you being here. I didn't mean to take up too much time, but that's the vision that I received from you, just seeing the passion you have. Thank you for your time. Next question. Sir. Has everybody seen 2,000 Mules? Okay, put your hands down. Raise your hand if you have not yet seen 2,000 Mules the movie. Okay, so here's your assignment. 2,000 Mules the movie is by Dinesh D'Souza. It demonstrates how we have to win back the law and order of our elections. We have the cell phone data. Arizona, a Democrat leader just pled guilty. They caught her because of, in part, this information coming out. Bundling and ballot trafficking is illegal. In Maryland, ballot harvesting is technically legal, but not ballot trafficking. The difference is this. You have, in ballot harvesting, you have people going around getting ballots, but they must have a notarized affidavit from every voter because it's one vote, one person, one vote. And if somebody wants you to vote for them, they have to swear, they have to give you a proxy, and they have to have a reason. And Neil's questioning me, but I've done this election law. So you have to have the proxy form with the ballot, okay? But they don't check this. And so when people go around, they gather these ballot traffic, these stacks of ballots, and stuff them in these boxes, which we need help with that too. By the way, not only do we have early voting issues, we need people at early voting centers, but there are 172 ballot boxes that are not properly monitored. The government is required to have cameras on them, but they put them, if the cameras work, they put them sometimes in ways that are obscured so you can't quite see exactly who's stuffing what. We have to have eyes on the ground, and we will report for prosecution to the sheriffs. I have relationships I'm building. We are going after anyone we catch. And that better frighten people, because what you're saying is right about this mules. I had a Republican election official ask me or tell me, we have a secure election. We have one of the most secure in America and here in Maryland. What are you talking about? You better stop talking about the fact that, we don't have a secure election. And I said, oh, well, congratulations. I'm so glad you're serving our county and our state. Thank you so much. We need Republicans like you in there to make it happen properly. But I have a question for you. She said, what's that? I said, how did you stop the mules? And she said, what are mules? I said, you don't even know what's happening under your own nose. Watch 2,000 Mules and you'll see how they do it. In my committee, the Judiciary Committee, they bring in Open Society Maryland. These nonprofits are funded by international globalists like Bloomberg and Soros and all of these other individuals that have one goal, like the Zuckerberg money. They're illegally buying counties and influencing through nonprofits the vote. They're not like Republicans where we're dealing with ideology and freedom and talking about issues. They don't even hardly do that anymore. Have you seen some of the Democrats don't even put signs up like us Republicans? Why? Because they're going after ballots, not people. That's the difference, and that's why we have to catch them. In Maryland, we have ES&S machines. As governor, I'm going to take charge of those by executive order. We're going to do an immediate audit. They're required to have the packets of information. All of these machines are connected to the internet and they're uploading the count through unsecure packets of information. I'm told that some of them go through Germany. I don't know why they're doing that. Interestingly, my opponent helped procure these machines a year before the Trump election in 2020. I'm going to get rid of those machines. And we're going to go back to paper ballots. And I'm going to go back to one-way voting. This is our freedom. Canada has paper ballots. France has paper ballots, for crying out loud. So, because they know how to steal elections, probably, they're socialists. But we have to get back to freedom principles of verification of ballots. You can't do that when you're scanning ballots. When I was in Philadelphia on Lawyers for Trump, watching, fighting for Pennsylvania votes that were lawful votes, I watched and witnessed before my own eyes the ASFME, I believe, or I shouldn't say the name of the union because I can't remember. I believe it was an ASFME hat that she was wearing with an election badge, but it was a union. I'll just say that for the camera. It was a union. I don't want to. And the election badge lady her two scanning machines jammed after scanning about 1,000 ballots. She restarts the machine, she unjams the machine and rescans the entire 2 stacks after I had seen the count already happen before it jammed. And she did not go back and change the count. And this happened in a widespread scale. Every time the mail-in ballots were brought in, sometimes we would see them brought in with no down ballot voting, perfectly filled in ovals for Biden. It's called overvoting. President Trump allegedly lost Pennsylvania by 80,000 votes, but if you actually look at the Beltway counties where we were, they have about 200,000 overvotes. Some of these counties have more people voting than are registered. I'm not making this up. Look at Philly, look up Philadelphia. How many people voted and how many people are registered? Just do the numbers, do the math. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. But the mules are one way that we're actually catching them, and absolutely the machines have to be brought in line. And as governor, there is authority, immediate authority to take action. We do have an independent state board of elections, but the governor controls their money. So we're going to have some talking to do. We have to. Look, this is our country at stake. I mean, they are literally stealing our votes every election. This has gone on for years in Maryland. We know this to be true. One of my top leadership officials on my campaign is the former chairman of the Maryland Republican Party. And in his capacity as chairman of the Republican Party, he was informed and witnessed individuals throughout Baltimore City with their teams, the Republican teams, watching Democrats come into the poll, ask how many people were left to vote and what their names were, taking those names down, going back out to their cars, voting the mail-in ballots and bringing them in stacks. That's what they do in Baltimore City. They've been doing this for years in Baltimore City. So we're going to start catching them at it. That's one of the things that I'm praying that we can do as we proceed. So, sure. Yes, first to win the primary. So, for all of those who didn't hear, what's the strategy of defeating Kelly Schultz to win the primary? And without divulging my secret weapons, what are you? We are going to win big. When you look at Pennsylvania, they put 16, the Rhino leadership of the Republican Party of Pennsylvania, which ordered me as an attorney and others to stand down and not challenge the 3,500 dead voters that we had in Pennsylvania. They waved those in. They didn't. So President Trump called me. He's like, actually it was Jared Kushner called, and in my truck, he's like, what are they waving the dead voters in for? And the attorney for the RNC of Pennsylvania, the attorney for the Republican Party of Pennsylvania, waved them in, he said, because he was afraid that there might be one granny that was alive who would be paraded in front of the television cameras. And President Trump's son called him and said, the president just said that he doesn't care what it looks like, he wants the truth. And that's what we're up against. Making sure the truth happens through overwhelming numbers. And at the primary level, in Pennsylvania, the Rhino Party poured $16 million against Mastriano, my good friend Doug Mastriano, a decorated hero of the United States. They smeared his name. The Washington Post, out of desperation, called him a white nationalist. He is a gracious Christian man who has given nearly his life on the battle lines. So that was extreme, bigoted discussions by that despicable compost paper, as Mark Levin says. And that's why I refused to do an interview. They wanted to interview me before they endorsed my opponent. And I said, I'm sorry, I have a standard in my campaign where we don't discuss our interests, we don't discuss our campaign with extremist, bigoted propaganda machines. And I put it to them that way. Shocked them. The very next day they endorsed my opponent. And she bragged about it. She sent an email out, and I was like, yes! Just what I want in the primary. In the primary, I have the honor and privilege of being endorsed by President Trump.
Yes.
I have the honor and privilege of having more private donations than many of the Democrats running, as well as my opponent. And she's getting her money and her support from about 6 billionaires, one of which almost supported me, but then he got his arm twisted when I talked to him, by the Kelly the Hogan Machine, as well as the Hogan Machine's group of financiers. That's all she has. She doesn't have the voters. Now she's going to try to get some by misrepresenting, lying, she stayed in her basement too, or her living room. She won't debate me. When Jimmy Carter refused to debate Reagan, what happened? He lost. She has refused to debate me. She will not get up on the stage with me and debate. The one time I finally snookered her into it was she didn't know, she thought I hadn't confirmed, I guess, just this week to do the online virtual debate with Bethesda Beat. If you haven't seen that, I encourage you to go to my Facebook or just look it up and watch that virtual debate. I was told that we did well. And that Kelly was so bad, she left early. She left early. She can't handle it. And she couldn't handle the heat from the Democrats. So what you want as a Republican is somebody who's willing to fight toe-to-toe with the Democrats. I've done it for years. I went up against Jamie Raskin. I took him to task 5 times. He was so afraid, he literally campaigned on a almost 3-to-1 Democrat congressional seat. The District 8 seat was hugely Democrat. And I had him, I was doing everything I could to run. Is it going to be difficult against the machine? Of course. But that's where we come in. And so we have a plan. The plan is in action. President Trump has endorsed us. When I was, before I was endorsed by President Trump, we were beating, according to the poll, we were beating my opponent by 10 points. President Trump endorsed me, I jumped 54 points. They're not telling people this. They're not telling people this, and out of desperation, she did a push poll this past week to make it seem like the race is tight. So they published in the Baltimore Sun, oh my, the race is neck and neck between Schultz and Cox. Neck and neck. Now, I don't really mind that because I want you guys to know that, yes, they could steal this. Yes, they could try to buy this election. They could, and they are trying, actually. So we need to run like we're behind. But I have encouragement to tell you. She spent nearly $1 million on staff. I've spent almost zero on staff. Not to say that we couldn't have done better if I did hire somebody, but my staff has done fantastically. We have a poll, can I tell you? We are running them off their feet. We have a poll from the nationally recognized Remington Research Group that our numbers right now are 76 to 13% in Maryland. You know who's beating me? In Maryland GOP, President Trump. President Trump has an 81% rating in the Maryland GOP. And the reason why the Maryland GOP that I'm not at 81% with the president is because they know him more than me. So I have a need to get on television, I have a need to get our mailers, I have a need to get our robocalls, I have a need to get the information out so that people know who we are and what we stand for. And when that happens, we're going to win in a landslide. God willing. Bye. We're down to the wire too. We've got 39 days or something. So, by the way, people are voting right now. How many people got their mail-in ballot already? So 1 person. So we have already mailed about 74,000 Maryland Republicans who have already received their ballot. It's a sad day when we have a month and a half of voting. That's not right. It just is a recipe for shenanigans. Next. I don't want to hold us on too long. I tend to answer my questions a little longer than probably I should. Apologize. Sir.
past few years that COVID has been the most important issue. When you're governor, would you do a thorough review of the state's response to COVID? I'm thinking particularly of censorship of debate on the issue's medical opinions. And secondly, the suppression of treatments like ivermectin and hydrochloroquine. And to any degree that the state was complicit in censoring information and suppressing treatment where people may have died, would you consider doing that?
Absolutely, yes. That's the reason I'm running. That's one of the main reasons. Very good question. The question was, will I investigate, expose, and address the inequities of the lockdowns with the COVID treatments in particular and the communications that went on. Let me just tell you, when I had to sue the governor 2 years ago. Why? I didn't want to. I, for a whole month, approached him privately. I had 9 pastors as clients in my other hat, where I went before the Office of Legal Counsel in the governor's office because the courts were shut down. And we were asking for relief to be able to reopen churches and businesses so people could eat. And we kept getting rebuffed and rebuffed like the King of England and the Declaration of Independence. Many grievances, and they would just blow us off as if I didn't exist. I'm a seated delegate representing my district, and they treated us at most times as if we didn't exist. Now there are some people that serve the governor that are my dear friends, great Republicans. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the governor's power structure himself. He refused MPIAs. You know how he did it? So I issued discovery. I wanted to get all of his COVID task force emails and information because it was relevant and material to the case to say that we got to reopen the state. I had 30,000 businesses that were ready to fail. In fact, they were failing. In fact, many ended up failing. And you know what the governor's office said? Sorry, you don't get the information from the COVID task force. You don't get any of that information because the governor has issued an edict saying that it was a non-governmental entity that was advising him, and therefore it's not subject to the law. Can you imagine how lawless that is? Here he is making sweeping decisions based upon this governmental advice, and then claiming it's a non-governmental advice. That's an outrage, and I intend to publish it on the internet on day one. And if they destroy it before we get there, I will publish that. We're going to do forensics. I've got people in DC that can help recover whatever we need to recover, unless they smash it like Hillary did, I guess. But we have to get at this information. It's sitting there right now. They refuse to release the information. And on top of that, the day, 2 or 3 days after the governor took the monoclonal antibodies, my constituent, an Iraqi war veteran, was crying out for them, and the governor signed a stop, use, and shelve order. So my veteran died asking to be able to use them. We had them on the shelf at Frederick Health Hospital, and now his wife is a widow. All because of the governor's health order through the health department. That's an outrage, and we called him out for it. That has got to be exposed. All of this stuff has to be exposed. And you know, the scripture talks about this too, that God is a God of light. And we need to bring all this to light. And then let the chips fall where they may, because I believe that there was criminal activity involved. There was clearly misrepresentation. There were clearly actions that violated the Constitution, that violated the individual rights that we possess. And when they banned, look, at the time when we needed the most, under President Trump's Right to Try Act, our governor was forbidding us to even try remedies. And when I got COVID, I was in the hospital. It hit me pretty bad. It was during the legislature. In fact, my opponent attacked me saying, you missed votes for about a week. I was like, yeah, I was in the hospital with COVID. The Speaker of the House said I wasn't allowed into there to vote because she didn't want me, spreading COVID. You know what helped me? My wife snuck into the hospital these prophylactic treatments of ivermectin, of HCQ, of high doses of zinc, vitamin D. I'm talking about extremely high doses of zinc. And I'm not a doctor, but I was listening and following doctors from Florida and Dr. Zelenko from New York. And I said, you know what? I don't know if it's going to help me, but I was starting to not be able to breathe very well. And I was not going to go on those ventilators because I know that 60% of the people that go on the ventilator itself kills them. My uncle died from that, not from COVID, but it was a similar problem a couple years back, so I had knowledge of this. So I tried it. I said, well, you know, look, ivermectin's been around forever. HCQ's been around forever, let me try it. I was better in 8 hours and out of the hospital. I'm telling you, it was a blessing. And what bothers me is that so much misinformation was there by Big Pharma, and I love pharmaceuticals, by the way, because you know I did my dissertation in law school for my Juris Doctor on the benefits of vaccination, good, well-tested, time-tested vaccination from a Christian perspective, you know, because you look back and you see Louis Pasteur and you see the rabies shot saving lives and these things. But that's not what was going on. What was going on was an EUA experiment on our bodies and on our kids. And although I support the right to try, I don't support the forced demand of the government to say, you shall take this, because there were contraindications. And we know this now from the VAERS report. The contraindications were severe, particularly for some of the young people. And now we have verified deaths on the VAERS, you know, significant verified deaths. Anybody know what the VAERS report is in the CDC? If you don't know what the CDC VAERS report is, you should go look at it. It's where you're required, your doctors and nurses are required to report contraindications from any medication or vaccination. And as an attorney, I have represented individuals with contraindications from vaccination. The experts say that many times 6% of vaccinations generally have contraindications, particularly from 2 years old and under. This is a known fact, and it's something that you know, people need to be aware of, and this is why we have a vaccine injury court. So parents need to have the right, and we do have the right, to make those decisions. No doctor, no NIH, no CDC, and no WHO is going to tell me how many shots, when, and that I must give my child certain injections. Never. My child. This is my home. This is my family. This is my medical decision. And I've represented Orthodox Jews, for instance, who the government threatened to take their children away right here in Maryland. Because they were deciding to wait on a particular vaccine, and the particular health official didn't like that. And they were going to take, so I went right after the jugular. I litigate hard. And I said, you do that, we're going to take your deposition for 7 hours. Madam Doctor, that works for the state, that wants to take this beautiful child from his mother. And you know what? They threw that out faster. They didn't want to sit for a deposition. And they settled that, and they said, okay, yeah, you have the right to decide your own medical choices. And we had a Johns Hopkins doctor, thank God, that supported that case. But I just tell you that to say, there's a lot more to these issues, just as you pointed out, and they need to be exposed. A lot of people don't know about it, and if you even question it, you're called a conspiracy theorist. No, I'm all for science. Let's follow the science. What Fauci has done is taken us away from science. And even, you know, Trump became aware of this and started to say, look, we need to get back to the science. We need to get back into making sure people have freedom to ask questions like you're doing now. So, next. So the answer is yes, 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 yes. Yes to all the above. Expose. Yes, ma'am.
Well, then, we all looking forward to you are our governor, right? When you are our governor, we'll be all okay. But right now, our battle to fight is how do we do this election right? So will you be able to give us some advice? What we can do to make sure it's not going to have this fraud again? I'm not even sure this Hogan is going to get rid of those stupid machines. sneaky machine, you should say.
Yeah,
And so what can we do
yes.
to ensure they are not going to take those new into that, to do that, those things to ruin our state?
So we have a plan and we need your help. We need you to go to coxforfreedom.com and sign up. How many people have not signed up to volunteer on our website yet? coxforfreedom.com. Can you raise your hand? Don't be shy, it's okay. There's a lot of people who haven't signed up yet. Would you do this for me? You don't, if you can't donate to help me run TV ads, that's fine. Look, I have to put gas in my, I had to put fuel in my truck last night, and I'm like, what in the world? Under Trump it was 50 bucks, now it's 150.
Right.
So we're elected judge, we can't.
Let me explain. Good point. If you're an election judge, you can't work for my campaign, correct? So don't be an election judge, come and work for my campaign. That's a joke. No, that's a joke. Let me tell you why. Number one, here's the plan. Okay, so here's the plan. Number one, if you're able to be an election judge as a Republican, I encourage you to do that because we need more Republicans in Maryland being election judges. We are always short of election judges for Republicans. And sometimes, like in Baltimore City, they have a pretend Republican in some of those precincts sitting there. They're not a real Republican. We know this. As Republicans, we've known this for a while. They switch hats to pretend so that they can control that room. We need real Republicans that care about freedom to be election judges. That's the democratic process. Number two, if you don't have time to sit there for all the elections for Republican, and get your $15 pay or whatever they pay you, if you would work for us, that's very helpful because what we need is an army of volunteers. There are 172 drop boxes. They're there 24/7. That means we're talking 300 to 400 people if we just do shift work to monitor those with videos. It's almost impossible. So what we have is a plan to target these drop boxes, particularly the ones that we're made aware of that have faulty or potentially faulty cameras. And we need help to have people randomly monitoring these and catching people. Number two, as a member of our campaign, we must overwhelm the ballot. This is what I was saying about Pennsylvania. The Rhinos put $16 million in 4 competitors against Mastriano. He defeated them all overwhelmingly. And how did he do it? The same way MTG did it in Georgia. They wanted MTG out bad. And she had, even on her campaign signs, flood the vote, flood the ballot, or whatever her phrase was. Basically, get out there. Do you know that the Democrats sometimes have higher turnouts than Republicans? And we supposedly say we believe in freedom? We have people that will give their lives for freedom, and yet others who appreciate that don't even get off their sofa and vote. 33% if we do it on a good day as Republicans. Some of the Democrats will get out now. I don't necessarily believe this. It's probably cheating. I know it's cheating. But still, there are precincts. I have been there. Silver Spring is one of them. Where the Democrats come out and vote. It's shocking. And I'm thinking, oh my word, if Republicans only showed up to vote, we would overwhelm the ballot. So get your friends and make sure you have the vote in plan and that you do it. But as a member of our campaign, we have a plan to overwhelm the vote. And that includes shift work at the polls. You know that anywhere from 10 to 30% of the votes are decided as they're walking in to vote? So that's why you're an important part of our team. When you stand at the polls, like I've done for many candidates, and you hand our card, and the Democrats do this, and they're a little sneaky. Brigida knows this from Montgomery County. Down county in Montgomery County, I was campaigning, and they were handing out different colored ballots with everything filled in, telling everybody how to vote. It was pretty tricky. We as Republicans haven't figured that out yet, but we can make a difference because if we're there at the polls, meeting people as they're going in, friendly, that's going to make a huge impact. And then thirdly, the third part of our plan is a plan, like I said, to expose these mules and others and to publicize it. I'm going to have press conferences if needed. We have attorneys that are willing to help me. We're going to refer them for prosecution. People said, well, you're going to file a lawsuit? Well, maybe, but that's not the first thing I'm going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to file criminal charges. I'm done. If I get their license plate, if I get their ID on a video, I'm going after them. Why? Because this is America, and we've got to stop playing games with this stuff. So that's what we do. Follow up.
Yeah, we sign up for the election judge. But what I read is that when you go in and then you see something illegal, you're supposed to report, right? But like you say, it's under control of the Democrat. You may report, they might not do anything. So then, can you advise us?
Yes.
At that point, what can we do?
I would say that you should report it to two entities. The first would be to the state, the elections board, which is what you have to do. Sadly, they never do anything. They never do anything. I reported one lady in Silver Spring who flew in from Mexico and voted. Her daughter told me this. I saw her I voted sticker as she came out of the ballot room. I reported it. I told them, I said, you know, you're very sweet, but you're not allowed to do that in America. Oh, I didn't know. They let it go. Nobody did anything about it. Nobody got her information followed up. Nobody followed up with me. And that was just one person. But I believe it happens immensely. And so if you report it to have a paper, no, this is not legal advice. I want to make that very clear. So you should, you know, consider what you're told by attorneys or whatever. But generally, as a principle and as an educational value, our educational training is going to include you reporting to the government, and if you so would help the Republican values, report it to the Republican Party and to people that can maybe, you know, copy people like our candidacy and let us know, because sometimes the Republican Party drops the ball. But we've got to start getting a handle on this. And we're going to have a network. We're going to have people set up to report voter fraud. We're going to have some kind of a hotline email or text number. Probably use our 797979 or something similar to that. We'll have a hotline for anonymous tips. And I can't tell you as an election judge to help us out, but we're going to have a hotline and we're going to have people trying to help. Yes?
As a governor, what are your intentions in doing with the status of sanctuary in the state of Maryland?
Excellent. I think I did this. Thank you. Sanctuary state in the state of Maryland. Boo. Regina's been fighting this in my committee for the last 4 years or more, actually. This is a major problem. Right now, our Republican leadership, who my opponent is part of, is trafficking people from the southern border and dropping them off in our communities and making you pay for it. And now you can't even walk safely on your street. It's happening right now. It's part of the Biden administration's plan. I love immigration. My great-grandfather on my mother's side and my wife's great-grandfather on her father's side both came to America. God bless you all. Thanks for staying so long. Both came to America. Both came, yes, please take a sign. Both came to America on the same boat, 1 month apart. You know how we found out? After we were married? Different countries, by the way. We're not related right now. You know how we found out? Ellis Island. They came here legally. They came here with a record. There's a beautiful piece of paper for history that says they came to America and they did it right. That's the path that we should be focused on. And I love it when people, you know, strive to come here, because I have traveled to South America. I have traveled to Eastern Europe, and when communism was falling, I've seen why America is so precious. I understand it. I'm so glad that people love our country. But they don't come to America to let our laws and our Constitution be trashed. They come here because we all come here. Our ancestors came here because we believe in the rule of law for all people. We believe in upholding our civil rights and our values, but you don't have that if you've got your car being jacked and people being shot on the street every night in Baltimore City. They're literally mopping the blood off the street in Baltimore. I cannot take my children. My wife and I have 10 children, and I love to take my boys to the ball game, see the good old Orioles. But I haven't been able to do that for about 3 years. Why? As a state delegate, I became very aware of the murders, and the last time I went to a ball game, it went late, about 11:30, and I'm here with my little boys coming out, and I almost got mugged with my boys with me. I'm like, I'm not doing this again. Because it was this close to being something that could have been a disaster. So we have got to take charge of our streets, and I'm going to do it in 3 ways. Number one, we're going to end the sanctuary state and include ICE throughout all of Maryland through the 287G program. In Frederick County, we have caught 1,500 snipers, individuals with MS-13, cartel members, and we've gotten them off the street. We've also helped people who didn't know that they had valid citizenship status and green cards, and they were very happy to know that. So it's a program, in fact, the ICE program is, they treat people better than criminals in Maryland because they have the access under the treaties to their embassy. And so we have immediate obligation to bring in not only the normal help, the normal advice, and the normal opportunity for lawyers, but their embassy must be contacted immediately. So they have additional help. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. We can make sure it works properly, and we can make sure it works under law. But you cannot have a state if you don't have borders. You cannot have a state if you've got the cartels running Baltimore City. I used to practice law for 3.5 years in Baltimore City. The police don't always show up. You know why? The cartels are running things. That's how bad it is. How many people know here how many fentanyl deaths have happened so far this year? Anybody have a number? Fentanyl deaths in Maryland, yes sir.
268.
What's that?
268.
Okay, so that's Montgomery County, I believe. In Maryland, shocking, 1,450 deaths as of this week. That's like having 30 mass shootings. That's because our borders are open, they're running drugs and fentanyl through, they're killing people right now. It's a disaster. We can stop it. And if, I like to joke about this, but if Biden doesn't like it, we can send a little bus to Wilmington. He said he'd welcome him in. So we can encourage. So, and then lastly, to wrap up that, and then we gotta end, I know. So lastly, we're gonna restore peace to our streets by taking charge of Baltimore City, by backing our blue, by making sure that we have the MSP instructed to shall issue carry permits, so that if you are an individual who would like to have your own protection, you have that right. It's no longer going to be this, I think it's almost racist to say that a wealthy business person can get their permit, which they can, but somebody who needs protection, like a single mom or somebody who lives in a neighborhood they can't get out of, and they're concerned because of the crime, that no, they can't have their permit to protect themselves. They can't protect their lives, but you can protect your diamonds and your money. No, lives are more important. We're made in the imago Dei, the image of God. And we're all equal before Him, and so we all have an equal right to self-defense. We got to make that happen. And we got to make sure our Maryland State Police units, our anti-crime crack units, are once again operating at full speed across the state in a positive way, in a way that supports our constitutional sheriffs, and in a way that brings peace back to Maryland. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience. I'm asking for your support for our vote. Please go out. I need 100 people from each of you. How many people here have at least 100 people in your phone or your email contacts? I'm sure everybody does, right? Well, that would equal, look, we have 39 days. I need each of your 100 people to help me out. Please go get them for me. It costs me $1 a person to reach them, but you can do it for free for me. Thank you. God bless. We're going to win this. God bless.
Good.